So since it's Easter week, I thought it might be nice to do just some short videos looking at the Passion narrative. I love this week. I love reading the gospel messages here this week in Jerusalem and what went on. Easter's always had a big impact on me. My first exposure to Jesus was really when I was 16. I went to a Good Friday service at the First Alliance Church. They did a little Passion play, kind of mini one, and it did have a huge impact on me at the time. I remember it was quite an experience. It took me some time before I came to Christ, but it was because of that day that I didn't know where to turn when the time came. So obviously today being Palm Sunday, I think look at the Triumphal Entry. In John chapter 12, verse 12, it says, "The next day when the large crowd that had come to the festival heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem, they took palm branches and went out to meet him. They kept shouting, 'Hosanna, blessed be he who comes in the name of the Lord, the King of Israel.' Jesus found a young donkey and sat on it, just as it is written, 'Do not be afraid, daughter Zion. Look, your king is coming, sitting on a donkey's colt.'" His disciples did not understand these things at first. However, when Jesus was glorified, then they remembered that these things had been written about him, and that they had done these things to him. Meanwhile, the crowd, which had been with him when he called Lazarus out of the tomb and raised him from the dead, continued to testify. This is also why the crowd met him, because they had heard he had done this sign. Then the Pharisees said to one another, "You see, look, the whole world has gone after him." I love that, just a short little passage on how he comes in. If you go into Matthew, it goes a little more in depth about the crowd. There was a lot of excitement here. This was a massive crowd that's following him. John says, why? Jesus had just raised a man from the dead. Obviously, we're looking at, he's been ministering maybe 3 years at this point. Stories about him has been circulating. They've heard about this man who's given sight to the blind. He's healed countless people. And now he's raised a man from the dead. And that story was out right before this. So these crowds came, and what did they say? "Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, the King of Israel." It's such a huge statement, the King of Israel. At the time, the Jews were looking for their Messiah. They were waiting for him. They were looking for these signs, and then here comes Jesus, fulfilling a lot of these signs. People started to follow him. He drew large crowds. And so they're proclaiming him king as he's coming into Israel. And the reason I'm focusing on that is I often like to just picture what that crowd would have looked like. The excitement, they treat him like a rock star. He's coming in, they're laying their coats on the ground. They don't want him walking on the dirt, even though he's on a donkey. They're waving palm branches at him. They're calling him king, Hosanna. And there must have just been this crazy excitement. In Matthew, it says that when he got in, other people in the town were like, "Who is this guy?" And they're like, then people started telling him who he was. So there was a real excitement, and there would have been a real sense of expectation. The Jews had very specific expectations of their Messiah. They were expecting a deliverer. The one who was going to come in, he was going to conquer Rome. He was going to overthrow the Romans, toss them out of there, and restore Israel to glory and make them, a power in the world and put them to what they thought was their rightful place. So they had all these expectations. And obviously us on this side of history, we know that those expectations went completely unmet. The week definitely went downhill after this for everybody. Even his disciples, they're coming in and they see this crowd and says they didn't even know what was going on. They probably walked with a bit of sense of pride, like they were Jesus' close buddies, and here's this crowd worshiping him basically as he's coming in. But I feel like, there would have been expectations. And the reason I'm focusing on that is I feel like that's something we still do today. We come to God with a lot of expectations sometimes that he'll make things work out a certain way in our lives. We've talked in the past about surrendering to God, and often we surrender with conditions. Come to God and we say, I surrender to you, and now make this happen, whatever this may be from your plan. And we end up with unmet expectations in our own eye. So you've got this large crowd here in Jerusalem that has these high expectations that a few days later they were going to be devastated. It was going to go completely unmet. But what they couldn't see at the time was that God was doing something so much bigger, so far beyond anything they could have asked for or imagined, that their own expectations were puny in comparison, if you think about it. And so I often wonder in our own life, when we perhaps get disappointed by unmet expectations, is God doing something bigger, something better? I hesitate to ever tell someone that don't worry, your next blessing's just around the corner, but I don't hesitate for a second to say that God is always working in your life, and he's always working for good in your life. He's always working to bring about his good purpose of conforming you to the image of Christ. So sometimes we just need to suspend our expectations and just trust in him. And like I said, looking at this crowd, it's easy to see from this side of history, wow, like they got something so much better than just overthrowing the Romans and getting a little bit of freedom for a short period of time. They got something so much bigger. They got an event that literally shaped the world we know today. But you can't always see it in the moment. So the rest of the week, I'm going to look at a few different events that happened in Gospel Week and how they may have changed expectations. How people perhaps had a certain expectation of their Messiah and how it may have looked a little different on when it actually happened, or it might have just been completely blew them away and, disappointed them, surprised them. Who knows? But we'll go through that for a few more passages as we come up to Good Friday, and I'm just really, really looking forward to Easter. This is my favorite week of the year, so I hope everyone's having a fantastic week.